Okay, this is Pavel Kravchenko, co-founder of Distributed Lab. We are doing a lot of webinars and invite the smartest people, the best content, and the goal is to like educate people, provide them with the like most up-to-date knowledge. That's like a disclaimer, you know. And today we're talking with Jonathan,
Yep.
and I know Jonathan for more than 5 years, and he always knows something very unique. He has so much information that we never had time to really discuss that.
So we thought we were gonna like live
more
stream the whole thing.
more and the webinar is one way to really sit and talk and understand what's going on. So Jonathan, you can introduce yourself. I know
Yep.
like the one thing that I want to tell about you is that uh, IBM sourcing your projects, which is already like a super cool fact, you know, but you take from here and just do a proper intro.
Yeah, so that's great. So hello everybody. My name is Jonathan Levy. I'm the CEO of a company called Acera. Some of you know me from my Fabric days, where we spend a lot of time coding and managing. I was the release manager of Hyperledger Fabric. So that's why Pavel is mentioning that we sought some work with IBM, from IBM, through IBM, alongside with the IBM partner world. But we know each other from before. We know each other from before Ethereum was launched. I was working in a
Yeah.
company called Miro when there was only Bitcoin with Dominic Williams and Joseph Poon and Taj, who is now in MIT. And so at the time, we were sitting there at Stanford. This is the first time we met. And we were talking about the Israeli market. And you are trying to teach them Bitcoin. He said, look, what's going on with these Israelis? It's so, I'm trying to like, I said, look, it's a very tough market because everybody is technical or they think that they're technical. So you need to find the right person, like whether they're technical or they just think that they're technical. And that's a challenge. And that was like 2014. 2015, I was in Mirror. And then 2016, I started working for IBM Research. And the main goal at the time was to try to build a compliant DLT or blockchain framework that actually passes regulations. Now, there's a downside and an upside to that, to be honest, right? The downside is that you're working with very, very big partners. So, as a startup, it's actually difficult, and we will talk about it because both Pavel and I are running startups. So that's one kind of topic that I think will be interesting for many people in the audience as well, not just for me and Pavel. But on the other hand, you get a lot of requirements. So you sit near very, very large use cases. You cannot miss regulations. So it's not something, usually it's not an afterthought. So you work with people that are trying to deploy projects that have like sensitive data, identities, prices, I don't know what we're looking at. Just anything that you have in your inventory, and every time you work with supply chain, every hope is a problem, because it's like, it's supposed to be like an open market, but it's not really. So in enterprise, in general, once the project like scale, there's like high value and people are becoming more protective. And we'll talk about it like throughout the call, but it's an interesting topic, right? Because on one hand, you really want to work with the big guys because they have bigger problems. But on the other hand, it's actually slow, right? To get a lot of large players to talk the same language, and it doesn't matter if it's Ethereum, Fabric, Sawtooth, any DLT, even if we are talking about like just, let's agree on what cloud we're going to deploy on, they have a lot of restrictions, and it's a problem. Like you talk to a normal kind of regular, typical, not normal, I don't know, she need to be normal, but a typical CIO, in order for a bank or a financial, like any large institution to switch a cloud, if they want to, it's like a 5-year plan, right? They have like so many Ansible scripts and they have so many things that are embedded. So many departments are relying on some stuff in a separate cloud to tell them that, hey, look, move to another cloud, like the IBM cloud or the Oracle cloud or the Azure, So imagine now telling them not only that you need to move a cloud, you also need to like agree on the same language and the same workflow, and you have to put your sensitive data there, and your friends are your competitors. So it's a very big ask, right? So at the time, I honestly, I didn't understand that. I really didn't. I was working in Goldman Sachs. It was very clear. We had different departments. You know who is the friend, you know who is the enemy. You work for Barclays Capital, you work on like credit. It's very clear. You have like an asset class, you have a trader, you have the risk, you have the compliance department. Kind of, you understand the world. It's a big world, but it's a well-defined one. In blockchain, you're like, yes, taking a boat, you're like sailing in the sea, and you have no idea what's going to come because there's like export regulations, compliance, privacy, data storage, data retention, record retention, data segregation, like so many things that you kind of tap into. And you just come in, hey guys, look, I just wanted to sign a transaction and I want to know the ownership of the asset. And it's actually so much more than that. So it's an upside and a downside. I have to say, like, I enjoyed it, but sometimes it's exhausting because you really want to push, right? You want to build stuff. And sometimes that, wait, we need to get everybody to the next. So yeah, it's an interesting play. You have to be like patient and aggressive at the same time.
What how we are different with you is that I never joined any consortium or even even if it's some IT clusters or whatever associations. I hate them.
Okay.
And I'm not the part of any blockchain or Bitcoin because I know it's just a lot of talks. I don't want to participate in them. And you join them and you like you see.
I'm actually helping.
Yeah.
I'm actually helping. I'm like, I see problems. I try to solve them. I argue with people. I fight with people. I make friends. I'm getting there. But sometimes, it depends. Like, because there was a time. So especially in enterprise, this like this layer one kind of war. Whose DLT is better, and it's really and to be honest, as a technical person, I'm all into like collaboration. Really, I'm happy to collaborate on the framework and to fight, at runtime, like on the use case. So I said, look, let's have a standard like SSL. Let's agree on, change service spec, handshake. We do all the things according to a protocol that I believe should be open. And what you do with it, we compete. We can't compete on parameters. Like this is like the 70s and 80s, right? So I actually believe that we should get more people around the table. Many people believe that, no, my ledger is better than yours. And I think that we lost a lot of energy, like energy in terms of like, like particles flying to space in the sense of,
But because, you know why?
Why?
I'm reading this book right now, The Innovators, from Walter Isaacson. And basically the history of internet is the same. And I was surprised that until 1992, like technically, kind of internet already was present for 20 years.
Yeah.
It was illegal to connect your modem as a person to a telecom network. You had to have some workarounds like voice modems that you don't really connect to the wire.
Yeah.
And only in 1992, after long 20 years for some people of like courts, like appealings, etc., they allowed a normal person to connect to the infrastructure. And then AT&T was like against that. They said you will break our infrastructure. The same and it was surprising for me. And what I feel now is that very little time has passed since blockchain as like a thing has been invented, and these organizations, they have very limited knowledge what it is, even if they have some projects within departments. And talking about interoperability is even much more complicated thing because you haven't really touched it yourself. So with computers, it took them how many, like 40 years, and maybe like 35, until they improved and improved and improved, and then we have networks, let's connect them. So maybe blockchain is not ready yet for that.
Maybe the people are not ready yet.
Yeah, I mean, but this is
what I mean, right?
Question.
Because many people are asking me all the time, like, does it really work? I said, look, you are in the middle of a long transformation phase. Like what I mentioned about the cloud, what I mentioned about identities, like your wallets or not, whether you work with a wallet or not, whether you have a managed blockchain or whether you want to run everything on your own, like what do you do with mobile? So there are many questions, right? And somebody needs to make, like, I don't know, at least in kind of a decision tree, you have like at least 5 questions. Permissioned, non-permissioned, running your wallet, organization managed-wise, Active Directory, no, DID, no, not DID. I'm going to have like my own public-private key pairs. I'm going to put in Bitcoin. there's so many things going on that basically you're looking at how can I build a solution that, will not make like the participants bankrupt on one hand. On the other hand, will actually scale later on. So you want to start like slow, allow people to like get into that mindset of sharing and building what they share. But every different company that we saw had like a different time frame, like internally in the transformation.
Yeah. To a certain extent, I believe what's going on is a centralization, which is also fine. I mean, I'm not trying to fight now the approaches.
Yeah.
And in centralization in a way how we access the infrastructure. So like Bitcoin, look, you can like internet is also to a certain extent centralized because it's centralizing the way of access to information.
Yes.
So Bitcoin is centralizing the way to access to value. And like Ethereum was centralizing the way to access to certain like free assets.
Okay.
And if we talk about different cases, maybe we should let some centers of gravity to appear and then let them play and see how many matter they kind of attract.
No, actually that's a very good point. Like if you want some conclusions after like few years of like sometimes a really long uphill battle, is that it's better if the use case drives the solution and not the solution driving the use case. So when everybody's saying, like talking about blockchain, especially in the early days, right? That it's a solution looking for a problem, and say like, how can I hammer my use case into working in a blockchain way? And then you get do I go to like a notary service like in Corda? Do I go to Fabric? Do I go to like Ethereum? Do I go to like, I don't know, multi-chain, right? And I actually think that you need to spend more time with customers. And I really enjoyed doing that in 2016 and a little bit of 2017, but that part is actually beginning to begin. Like there's so many fights now that, I see especially in the enterprise space, people, even within consortiums, people don't share requirements. So, and that's a problem. Like when we started, it was actually better because people said, look, but I need to have like loyalty points. And I know I actually want to look at like credit score and I need privacy. So it was very clear why we're building what. And I think we're losing it, especially if you're looking at like, okay, there are two problems. You cannot have one framework to fit everything, okay? And then if you do have a few cases that have the same framework, they all want to differentiate somehow. So they add some features, right? Like, and then you end up with like the SQL standard for querying with a lot of extensions. So, and then people fight over like the secret. I really believe that if the use case is driving the tech, it's easier. So your point about centers of gravity, let's find a few good use cases. And honestly, personally, Jonathan, like forget Asera now, forget like, any project or open source consortium that I'm part of or just working with. My personal view is that if Corda is doing something right and they have a few networks that are growing, that's great. And I've always said that. 2016, I always said that. I said like I don't think people in Fabric should worry about Corda and vice versa. I think let's find the use cases because the successful ones will carry and bring more advances and more innovation to the space. If you're just going to try like a one-off thing and so many POCs that failed, this is not going to fly. But there's a bigger question, right? Are we going to all convert to like Bitcoin as the settlement layer that takes some time? Or are we going to all create our own small kind of, let's call it societies, in the sense of like, I don't know if you want to call it like ERC20 or any named coin or anything like that, that will not interoperate, like that will work in separate and silos. Because what I see now, all this fragmentation actually causes a lot of silos, like even more silos. So there's like even in Fabric, you have silos. So, even in Corda, you have some silos. And R3 is trying to connect them. And IBM and Unbounded, we created like big networks that will move value. It's actually difficult. Especially without the standard, by the way.
Yeah, but you can move value within the organization. This problem hasn't been solved too. It's
That's
like
true.
we have tons of registries to which we don't have not even open APIs, but applications or even web interface. And
yes,
most of the banks don't have the web interface. I mean, there are many banks. We just know the most well known. I used to be a mobile developer who wrote mobile applications for big banks.
Yeah.
And believe me, this is still very early days. They haven't really
Of course.
updated much. Yeah.
So
So the
it's
smaller
funny.
ones.
It's funny, like in banks, it's so slow that the regulators actually are forcing the development. So open API is actually a must. So now the regulators say, look, you have to open up. You want to be able to look at an account. I want to be able to double check, like, if you are really who you are. For money laundering, there are many regulations and restrictions. Like, I can't really transfer something to you if I didn't really check, like the know your customer, right? So as part of these checks, they're forcing the banks to have some open APIs. But then fintechs are having a very hard time like these days because they don't have access to all of this, right? So
yeah, this is surprisingly, and maybe because digital identity is not ready, because like payment initiation service provider license is already for quite a long time, a few years, but very few wallets. I've seen very few of them, and I don't know anybody who's using them.
Yeah,
honestly. Trust.
So how do we get to a mode where people make money from consolidation and not from fragmentation? I think that will drive a lot of innovation into one, at least into the same direction. Not only in the same path, but we're all going to start opening APIs, looking at API services and API lookups and service discovery, so that we can grow a little bit. If every project takes like 2 to 3 years just to get everybody around the table, how much money you think people can make in a project? And really, do you save money, make money? It's not clear. So I think these are the problems that I see in terms of sales cycle, implementation cycle, testing cycle. Like, I don't know. I don't have IBM is 109 years old, so you have to remember that, like, when you kind of look at the scale of an innovation for like half a decade. I still think that Bitcoin is amazing, and it's still amazing because it showed everybody that we can have a financial system without a central authority. There are some advantages, 51% is not the best protocol, maybe it's not the best consensus, privacy is an issue. There are some issues. Well, we shouldn't, one would hope that in 10 years we will have improvements, and we should add improvements, maybe to Bitcoin, maybe not, but it is a breakthrough. And it was a little bit of a slap in the face to many kind of researchers that kind of worked on distributed systems for so long. And then, so I don't know, because we've been around for a while, like, I don't believe that Satoshi was one person. I think, like, if you look at the quality of the code, if you look at like the combination of the kind of digital signature and the distribution and the consensus, it's actually not easy for, I think, one person to do all that and to deliver something like that in a working fashion. But if you look at it, it's actually very simple and very nice. So in a way, many people are telling us that, especially when you work in a regulated environment, that things are too complicated and are difficult to understand. So I wish we can actually consolidate to something simpler and grow and scale, with the size of the, participants, data sets, identities. At the moment, like, it's a very big upfront cost.
Yeah, it seems like when you said the two things that I'm thinking now about, the first is the use case drives the solution.
Yeah.
I agree. Even though each of us is coming with a solution looking for a problem.
But honestly, we I spend enough time finding problems, and we have a few very big problems. Identity is a huge problem. And so
indeed. But I mean, the problem that people really understand and can express
feel
in
it,
money.
Feel the pain. Yeah,
in money. You remember there are criteria how to like measure that readiness. And the second is that how can we make people earn from collaborating and not from the like working for like separating?
Yeah.
This is also like a good question, and to a certain extent, I would provide an example that like the data, the files appeared as soon as computers appeared, right? So like long time ago.
Yeah.
But the services like Dropbox and Box and other Google Drive, they didn't appear until people had excess amounts of data that they couldn't manage. When you have 10 files, it's easy. You don't need Dropbox, right?
Yes.
And you have them on your computer. You don't move it, right? It's only at work. And when it's like excessive, then the solutions start to thrive.
Right.
So maybe
like beyond some threshold.
Yeah, maybe something should happen. It's like, we are working on the intersection of fintech and blockchain and like asset management. And what we see is that, yes, we have a solution for the asset management. I mean, for transactions, for splitting, for dividends payouts, like in fees and limits, etc.
Yeah.
But what we realized that the people don't have that much assets yet to manage.
Yeah.
It's like they have the few credit cards, but it's like more or less like using credit card is dumb. It's very,
so
very
when
simple.
you say people, like retail view, like end users, not
end
like
users, end users. The problem, obviously the problem first should appear in the enterprise, then in like maybe first in the research center, then like enterprise, then smaller enterprise, or maybe first military, and then the consumer.
Yep.
And like they don't have this problem, even though we are bombarded with the marketing offers, like take this voucher, spend this voucher for discounts, and add them on your Apple Wallet. But it's still very small amounts, and they are usually value is zero. Yeah, so people don't perceive this as an issue yet.
Market education for retail is a huge task.
Yeah, maybe I'm not talking about education. I'm talking if you have 10 like files.
Yeah,
there's no point to educate you to use
Dropbox. I see. Okay, so you say, okay, so there are two things here, right? So now I understand, sorry. So you say a random guy, like an average person, doesn't have that many assets that they need, like a managed solution that, they can forget the key and then recover, etc.
Yeah.
And for them to be their own bank, once a month, like I always forget my password to my bank. I just, and then I go.
Everybody does.
Everybody, right? It's like, you look at my email and you can tell, oh, he logged into, So it's not a problem if it's not like, okay, that's for retail. But imagine a world where, imagine a world where you don't trust the cloud providers, where you don't want to put everything in Gmail or in Facebook, and then, and you see what's happening now, Black Lives Matter. So there are many people from different areas, or from different parts of the spectrum that don't trust governments, like different governments for different reasons. Some people think that they're like being discriminated. Some people actually are being discriminated, right? There's some governments that are less nice than others. Some people there are people that will tell you, I don't believe in democracy. Some people I don't believe in whatever, right? So there are different kind of people that actually have reasons not to trust some authority. But then they have to manage everything. But the problem that they have is that they can't do it on their own. So you can't work with Bitcoin if you're like the only person using Bitcoin, because the value, like the frictionless, right? The ability to not go through a bank account. So the classic example, right? Everybody's saying, why do we need to wait T+5 or T+3 for transfers? Okay. So you can move to a T0 or T+1 or immediate, 5 minutes, 6 minutes finality, right? But if you're the only one, then we need to think about how long it will take to all our friends to go there too. I can't just have my own network, and then every time somebody wants to send me something or receive something from me. So we need to have like a critical mass. And what people forget sometimes is that we need to give incentive for people to kind of change their behavior all the way. So you're right. When we have like millions of people using Bitcoin or millions of people using, some distributed asset that basically can move around without a bank, let's say, while meeting regulations, by the way, while, not allowing people to do illegal stuff in a way that is risky, like to buy, like lethal weapons or, to do like all the activities that you shouldn't do by any local jurisdiction, because your legal kind of situation is actually local. Israel, US, Ukraine, even different states in the US have different rules. So you have to like meet this everywhere you go, while allowing people to do it with, very easy like upfront cost. I think that's a huge problem, like
Yeah,
inherent.
and
Yeah.
also we don't have a lot of companies that have instant T0 management of their own assets.
Yeah.
So yes, we have digital banks, but they appeared relatively like recently, and obviously they value their technology because they invested a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the engineers, maybe there is no critical mass of engineers who like touched every day the building of such systems, the architecture and designs.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
therefore, when you try to spread this technology, it's like people don't understand on that end. So yeah, Bitcoin and other like crypto is indeed a good example of what you can do with your assets when it works 24/7, when exchange works 24/7. That was the first time, yeah.
Of course. No, but we understand that, right? Like if you look at Acera's kind of motto, right, for years, secure asset transfer anytime, anywhere. I don't need to wait for my exchange. I can do it anywhere, and it's my asset. So I want to sign, hey, Pavel, here, have like one of my assets or a fraction of my asset. Shouldn't be a problem. I propose it to a network. If I'm okay, if you're okay, it shouldn't be an issue. That's kind of the vision, right? But many people don't understand. Like, try to explain regular people, normal people, or an average Joe, what is a UTXO? Just the model. It takes some time, right? I say, hold on, but so I need to beg the network to say yes? So no, you just need to make sure that everybody is aligned with the fact that the asset moved. I said, but is it better? Yeah, it's much better than waiting for one bank that doesn't work on Fridays. But you have to say, no, I'm used to not working on Fridays. Or it's okay for me to wait for Monday. So many institutions just got used to it. They really got used to it. T+3, T+5, it's okay. Look, we have people that pay us like T plus, I don't know, 72, 90, 100 sometimes. So, plus minus a week, it's okay. But it's like big money, big projects, like a long time, it took us a long time to get used to that as well, to that cycle.
Yeah.
But once you're used to that, I don't care if I get the money like today or the next day. But microtransactions, somebody trying to sell stuff to Africa. So, okay, now I'm going to open like another topic, right? Where is the financial inclusion? The fact that I can wait 100 days for payments. What about all the rest of the people? What about like people in Mexico that, need to pay like to Western Union on every transfer, sender and receiver? Like, this is not fair. So we're creating like a digital world that is not necessarily fair because we're imitating the unfair current world.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would like, because I see Acera, digital asset, distributed lab, like there's a few prominent startups that actually are pushers as like trailblazers. We like open a trail. It's like very difficult to use tokens. Okay, let's try to do it. It's very difficult. We are really, sometimes we take risks that are like just not rational, because we care about the tech. But we need to remember like why, like what we came here for, right? It was not just to create the same financial system with the same rules, with the same silos, just a little bit faster or cheaper. It's to actually make a change, because the technology has a huge potential, but it's not an easy technology to understand. That's what I'm saying. Like, there's a lot of behavioral changes that we need to go through, and it doesn't fit everything. There are many banks that will tell you, they feel the risk. They don't want to be replaced. They like the silos, the information asymmetry. They love it. So you need to find the right department in that bank that actually will make money from the consolidation and the instant transfer. It really depends.
Yeah, this is a tricky part, the politics.
Yeah, the politics and to know who to talk to, right? So when I'm selling credit,
Right.
I don't like volatility, right? I want to charge you and there's nothing will happen. It's an insurer, right? Insurance don't like volatility. They're happy to say, look, there's 5% that something will happen. We charge you 7%. I make 2% flat. What if the market moves like 40% a day, right? Like what we see right now. So nobody's happy. States are not happy. Fluctuation is crazy. Insurers are not happy. It's out of control. So, but if you go to a flow desk, they love this, right? Because they make a margin on every transaction on flow. So you need to find the right asset class that will actually support our tech. That's what I think.
Mm-hmm.
You need to find the right trader. That's my view. Yeah.
Interesting perspective. And that department will like kind of flatten the with
So,
time, yeah, everything, yeah.
yeah, like algo traders, right? They always look at the margin, right? And they try to find, you know, they're making, they're the ones that actually create the market efficiency sometimes, right? Because if there's like so they always flatten that. So and if we can use this technology to actually benefit from, you know, decreasing the margins, then we are good, because then you're like saving money, people will invest. But if you tell somebody, look, you need 5 years now to get all your competitors and get the privacy settings, oh yeah, there's some Zcash, and then the ZKP, there's baseline protocol. People don't know where to begin. And this is why I like actually what you do, right? And I told you that several times recently. It's, you're really lowering the barrier to entry. So guys, it's working, you know, start working now. It's ready. You don't need like 6 months of billable hours, 10 years of like, no, let's just start. Let's plug it in. Okay, you need identity, we have it. You need JSON, you have it. You need, it's much better, because I'm sure that you see a lot more than like somebody that needs to wait 5 or 9 months to understand what are the requirements, right? So this is how I look at it.
Yeah, I agree. We try to reduce these barriers well while issuing some books.
It's important.
Jonathan, let's talk about permissionless and permissioned.
Let's do it.
I understand this is in a area of enterprise blockchain.
Okay.
As I understood, like what you wanted to cover. And how do you, and I know many companies, enterprise, that said, oh, we need permissionless systems. We need public blockchain. And then if you ask them more like route questions, they kind of stuck.
And vice versa, actually. I'll tell you both sides. No, it's true. I understand.
Okay, can you share your perspective on how do you like, which maybe funny situations do you encounter and how you resolve them?
So my life is very funny, actually, especially in blockchain. I have like, okay. So it's a very like I don't know, charged topic, you know, because if you think about it, and people don't like it when I say it, but if you really think about it, when you're looking at proof of stake, it's also a way to permission stuff, you know, because you're making sure that I have $1 million at stake before I can do something, right? So I got some, you know, it's like a step that is not like zero kind of cost to come in. So for me, permissionless is basically my definition after looking at, you know, many blockchains and many use cases. I think the main difference when I look at the permissioned kind of network or consortium or just, you know, any operating model is whether you know who the validators are, okay? So if you know that in order for me to get a transaction in, I'm just gonna throw something out there, Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, HSBC, and maybe Santander not to say no, you know, so they can be validated, they can object or not object. And they need to say okay or wait for a day, or so I need to trust them, because maybe if they are corrupt or if they are not regulated, or if, you know, I don't know what's the rule book. So for me, or when I work in highly regulated kind of data, especially these days, I actually think that permissions are easier. It's easier because you set up a few trusted anchors, and then if they're like easygoing, they agree to set up a network, and then we grow slowly. And it's easier in terms of meeting compliance, regulations, making people a little bit more safe, because we start with 4 nodes and we know each other, okay? Permissionless, on the other hand, doesn't require much. Like what I liked about Vitalik's model is actually the microservices part. You know, I have like a Lambda service, so I don't need anything. You know, I just come in as if, right? As if I don't need anything. I create like a private, I create an Ethereum account, I add a mine or convert or go to a centralized exchange, and I buy some ETH, you know, and then I pay as I use a function, you know? What people missed at the time, and actually it was actually the success of Ethereum, was that it became so expensive that at some point, if I had an application like a DApp, and this is like interesting statistic that nobody talks about, and imagine that I have a game and I'm making only 2 transactions a second, let's say, okay? And I'm paying per transaction, like just the normal gas fee. It will cost me $50,000 a month, when ETH is like $200. It will cost me $50,000 a month per user to run it on Ethereum. Let alone the storage, and let alone like the confirmation time, let alone that I can unroll a transaction, so it's not, finality is not immediate, right? So I get a proposal, people agree, it's kind of written, but it's not final. People can still roll it back in the next blocks. So enterprises can't live like that. I can't just pay you like the $15 million and then 40 minutes later said, actually, there was another block that conflicted and we had to unroll it. And then the miners will tell me what's going on. I need to know who the miners are. If I'm an enterprise, if I'm an FSI, if financial services infrastructure, I really need to know, because sometimes it's not even my money. I'm just relaying something, an asset or cash. So these are the problems, right? The problem is like the barrier to entry, because if your permissioned network is not accepting, or is becoming like a silo, and it becomes like an elite, that you can't join, that's one problem. And the permissionless is actually sometimes insecure. However, some people will tell you that it's more secure, that you have competing consumers, that they all fight to mine the next block. And then, I don't need anything. I'm going to trust it more than I'm trusting, like, let's say, right? AWS, Azure, IBM, I'm going to try, because the best cloud is completely decentralized. But that's what they say. But can you really guarantee that the cloud will be up and running? So this is why I think the main problem is, what is the problem that you're trying to solve? People are fighting over.
Always a bigger problem.
It's a bigger problem, and it's easy to kind of start arguing. Like football teams. You're Chelsea, I'm like Liverpool, and then we sit down. But then you're missing the point of like, do you really enjoy football, or do you really want like Chelsea to win? Do you really want blockchain to succeed, or do you want Fabric to win, whatever at all costs? And which version of Fabric? Even that is fragmented, right? So I think the winners, like, we need to adore the guys that actually taking the plunge and going all the way to address what customers need and try to really make ends meet. Like, if it's privacy, let's talk privacy. It's like finality time, response time. Let's talk about that. Is it transaction cost, hardware cost, and different networks have different needs. So it's like, and these are I think it's early days, also because many people are not used to the new technology and they can't transform so quickly. It takes time. UTXO, account-based, doesn't matter. It takes time to really change, because it's a fundamental change. It's not like, oh yeah, I send you a PDF and I also file something in a folder and then I fax it. No. It's not. It's instead of, right? It's not in addition to the normal process. It's changing the core of the asset transfer process.
Okay, yeah, I agree with you on this point, and I always treat Ethereum or public networks as a public depository. It's not a payment system. It's very inefficient as a payment system, but as a depository, a global one, yeah, it may work, or maybe a global market, order book for big, again, things, or timestamping service. Also,
timestamping definitely.
Yeah.
Timestamping definitely, like an order of events. Like if I want to prove that something happened, definitely. But the network has to be large enough so that there will be less manipulations, right? So we cannot be like, so imagine you have like a private Ethereum network of 5 people. And then, so you need like massive kind of liquidity and volume and flow so that this infrastructure will be reliable enough. Look, I don't want to name because I know the guy who is going to really not like it, but there is a very big public chain that was supposed to be decentralized. And when AWS went down, the whole network was down. So you're like, hold on. Who is running all these nodes?
Really?
Yeah, it's the truth. Yeah, it's a big story. You can find it. But yeah,
okay.
So you need to have enough competition, to really be decentralized, in the sense that people will make sure that the system is up. And not like Pavel and Jonathan will actually put it down, blackmail the guy. No. It has to be like enough, So if you don't validate transaction and I don't, somebody else will. Because that's the guarantee of the uptime.
Okay. Jonathan,
now you're focused on the,
tell us about this new consortium that you announced. You told me, and then you
So
move
Acera
on.
is part of a very, yeah, no, that's interesting. So Acera is part of a new not-for-profit US 501c consortium, yeah, that is called the Interwork Alliance. And it's run, well, there's like a board of Accenture, Digital Asset. There are a few actually, you know, some old-timers in the blockchain space that actually are not all fanatics about blockchain. And the idea is to, how do we make multi-party systems interoperate? And it's kind of I don't know, I think many of us got burnt with all this fragmentation that we saw in different projects. And we just started to think about how can we really work together. So, you know, Acera at the time kind of released the Unbounded Network, which was an attempt, and it's still working to try to allow people to work with different networks. So imagine you have like, you don't need like one wallet for Ethereum, 5 wallets for each of your Fabric projects. And basically we try to basically allow you to come in and to connect to different networks, which work with IBM because, you know, we collaborate with them in the open, works with Oracle, works with a few of the large players that actually invested in the same framework, but it doesn't work when you have to like catch up with so many moving parts with crazy release cycles of each of the, you know, public or private chains. So the attempt is to try to sit down and create like a spec that people can start to discuss. You know, to begin with, terminology. When I say finality, what is it? When I say transferable, when I say, you know, fungible, non-fungible. So let's agree on what it is. Because, you know, people will tell you, oh yeah, Hedera is this and that. Okay, so let's use the same terminology. So when Hedera hashgraph is telling you, what do they mean by inability to fork? Let's discuss that. You know, so that was announced like earlier this week, right? Earlier this month, right? And I'm probably going to focus more on the tokenization part because I've spent a lot of time being the vice chair of the token taxonomy framework. And the idea is actually to create stuff beyond just ERC20, you know, like to allow people to have different kind of tokens, different kind of behaviors, different kind of patterns. There is another track for kind of analytics and to try to understand, I don't know, blockchain explorers and how do you get to a network and how do you read what's going on there. And there is another kind of part of it, trying to standardize some smart contracts, because that's another Pandora box, right? Like smart contracts in Ethereum versus, you know, DAML smart contracts versus digital asset DAML versus like chain code with all the versions and the different languages, R3 Coda. So we're trying to kind of make people build stuff in a way that, let's see how, look, it's difficult to just tell everybody, look, we solved it, give us like 6 months, it's all going to be done. But we can start making a lot of progress because we have many players from, you know, the wide spectrum trying to work together. So I really hope that it's taking off. We got like I think we got a lot of support, but I think there's a lot of work to do as well. It's not an overnight.
Yeah, I can imagine. So yeah, indeed, the question of the token standard, for me, it's even confusing because I believe that it might not be the best approach to put all the business logic in the contract itself, like ERC did.
Yeah.
I mean, it is useful to experiment with, but it has some limitations and, you know, problems. And obviously, because Ethereum became popular, it was the only platform to issue unregistered securities. Then these standards popped up, and yeah, now they kind of in there. But who knows where they will be in 5 years? Like MySpace, you know, other social networks until like Facebook came. So I would actually watch, and I would see again. I would look for use cases and see what can appear out of that, and then standardize approaches that led to the success.
Yes. So again, you want the few centers of gravity, see what catches, because everybody's throwing stuff out there. No, I agree. And by the way, I actually think that the shakeout that we see now and we are continuing to see in the blockchain space is actually not bad. Like how many, I don't know how many shitcoins did you see, like 5,000 and like maybe 100 working, you know. So and we and you know enough founders, like, you know, in first person, that actually really worked very, very hard, and they ended up like having a community that went against them, and the whole project collapsed. We saw a lot of ICO people that took the money away and just ran with it. Okay, we're trying to like say that we don't like banks and we don't need like governments, and then, you know, we get the scammers running the show, and okay, dude, okay, this is why we have the government and the police and the law, etc., etc. So this also didn't help the crypto space, I think, even though it brought a lot of money in. But there's one thing that I liked about the whole kind of 2017, and is the simplicity of ERC20. You know,
it is simple, yeah.
And that was impressive, right? So forget about the ICO scams for a second, and think about how easy it was. Forget about the guys that like sold like smart contract auditing and security. You know, that I think that was crazy. But because there are a few guys that actually know how to write a smart contract like in a resilient way. I think the main problem that we saw at the time is that how long did it take for somebody to run yet another testnet, devnet, and another mainnet, where all you need to do is like to have another consensus algorithm, and you didn't need to build a whole new chain just for this one thing that could have been a parameter. You know, so Ethereum was, I think the ERC20 kind of was very, very helpful, because so many projects would do whatever they wanted without changing the infrastructure from the ground up. Same wallet, same exchange, same account. You can invest in this ERC, the other ERC. And that's what I mean about like lowering the barrier to entry. Find something you already have and try to give them like a diff, not a completely new thing that they have to throw away their laptops and need to move somewhere else. You know, like the mobile phones are becoming gradually like a laptop replacement. That's great, but it happens gradually, you know? So, yeah.
Yeah, indeed. This is a very interesting topic. And regarding smart contracts, it's also very tricky.
It's very tricky. Because it's so tied to your network, right? It's so tied to your, the Solidity compiler is tied to, look at Ethereum Classic now, right? And look at like, ETH or ETC, like the smart contracts. Look at like DAML. We work with DAML, and we still kind of support DAML because we really like the language and digital asset. But it's very, very difficult to integrate DAML with every single chain out there, right? So what digital asset is doing now is trying to find like the leading ones and to say, look, I have a better language, and it's really a nice workflow language, but it's difficult. It's difficult because you have to build the whole workflow as well. And they work very, very hard to kind of standardize smart contracts. And by the way, they are part of the board. So I don't think we should do only DAML, by the way, even though digital asset would like me to say that. And they really believe that, and I really like DAML. But we need to leave room for, there is a huge Ethereum community with a lot of investment in smart contracts, Solidity, that actually pass like auditing, and some people really tried and they're happy with what they have. Yes, Ethereum doesn't scale, it's expensive, ETH2 is coming at some point, there are improvements, but we can't just throw everything, to the bin and start fresh. Oh, I have a better language.
Yeah, we need to learn, sure.
We need to and do it gradually and give people like an upgrade path. And that's why I think it's gonna take some time. There's like enough investment right now in the Ethereum kind of ecosystem. And I like the Ethereum community, so it's not something I have to split at. It's like, if we think that, so I think that we need more privacy. You can't like allow people to profile it, right? So Goldman Sachs doesn't want people to just come into a trader that worked there like 6 years ago and they see everything they've done over the last 7 years. It just doesn't make sense. It's not even legal, right? They have rules in terms of like privacy of what they do as an institution. And so Ethereum doesn't give you that privacy. So now you see movements there, right? You see like people are coming in with like ZK snarks and stocks and so many, like diversify. And so there is a lot of investment in terms of talent, money, efforts, IP that is in these ecosystems. So I don't think we should like throw one, and we need to find the centers of gravity and let people play and see what sticks. So I don't want to dismiss anything. I don't want to be the judge. I'm just trying to include as much as possible, but also that's also not easy, right? So we need to find some prominent use cases that actually make sense, that will kind of grow and scale. And many people are falling on the way. Many, you see, how many people are crashing? Like 20.
Okay. Last question for me for today.
Yeah.
What are the best use cases that you have identified?
In what? In DLDs, blockchain, in
Yeah,
crypto?
yeah. But DZ blockchain. For crypto, we know that the best use case.
So, okay. So let me qualify what I think is the best use case before I say something. So I think supply chains have like a huge problem so okay, I'll tell you what we are focusing on. We are focusing now on a lot of provenance so that you understand the provenance or the history or the origin of the asset that you're about to buy. So a known use case is like, I'm looking at the sandwich and I want to decompose the sandwich like a tuna sandwich, right? So I say, okay, the tuna came from this vendor and it was in the fridge over there, and the bun and the sesame on the bun and the storage and everything along the way. And it's very difficult to do. But this is a very good use case of how do I really trust what I see? And it's not a one-off thing that somebody emailed me about that thing. And it's useful because there are many parties, and it's actually an interesting, difficult problem. But there's a ton of value in sourcing food correctly, safety, regulations, understanding like what's going on, and just in general being more healthy. So that's one kind of supply chain in terms of like food, supply chain in terms of data. So you probably saw, right? We launched this like Mipasa network that actually is is actually successfully doing, trying to allow people to really understand what data they're using in their reports and where it came from. So, you know, people are just taking something, downloading it, changing it locally, and then publishing like a JPEG, and then they forget what happened. Then a year later, they get a lawsuit. But hey, what was that? Say, hold on, this data was from here, and this is what we have done to the data, and this is how we generated the block or the report. And so this is like one example. The next one is actually related to identity. So it's not a full global digital identity for everybody, because that's a difficult task, but it's more.
But look, email was a very simple answer to the similar question.
Email?
How to make a mailbox for everybody at the single moment of time.
So who is winning the email war? Google.
No, nobody. I mean, yeah, now Google.
Now Google, right?
But before, yeah, it was, yeah.
But it was Hotmail. And Microsoft at the time tried to create something called Microsoft Passport, if you remember. You know, and that was supposed to be your ID, and it didn't work out. And then Google actually won that battle by more storage and faster. I don't know exactly what exactly. I liked it because it was just easier for me to store a lot of stuff, and then it was integrated with my phone. So that's why I moved to Gmail. And now it's very easy for me to authenticate and, you know, like log in with Google. And we have the G Suite for our company, et cetera, et cetera. But if you talk to people in China, they say, no, Gmail is not the right thing, right? If you talk to like people like talk to Satoshi, they're GMX, you know? So there's still alternatives, but there is a standard and there's choice, you know? So I think what we're doing wrong, by the way, in terms of the use cases, I think that there are many companies and there are many players that think that instead of like, you know, they're used to like very high transition cost. So they will lure you into a system and they will make you spend so much on integration and creating the users and the identities and the permission, and everything is going to be so not standard. And then you're going to be locked. So I get like one customer and that's it, he's going to stay for 10 years. But the customers are jumping out when they understand how expensive it is, and they need to bring more people to the consortium, and they have to go through the same kind of training of like stripping your Active Directory and moving to this new identity that works only in this network. They don't like it. So having networks that allow people to move identities around with privacy, because, you know, I spend a lot of time on zero knowledge proofs, like a lot of time, to be able to move with a different identity, but to still move and to still control my identity, I think it's an amazing use case. It's an amazing use case.
Yeah.
You know?
It has to pick up. Yeah, I agree.
It is picking up. It's just slow. It is. It's happening. It's just very, very slow. Like in Unbounded, we support so many standards. and we just decided like to stop supporting so much. So we're probably going to go to, so okay, Fabric, of course, Ethereum, of course, probably baseline protocol soon because it's picking up a bit. So once something goes like a little bit, high in the threshold, then we want to spend enough resources on it. But we can't support 5,000 networks that don't want to talk to each other. Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, of course.
If it's if they are different, if they are more or less uniform, then.
So I hope that the Interwalk Alliance will make it easier. I really hope. I can't promise. I'm gonna try. As one of the members there. But I think at least we have the right mandate. We did it because we are trying to really make ends meet. And then let's fight over like where do you want to deploy your DAML contracts? Where do you want to put your identity? What's your knowledge proof algorithm you're going to use? What circuits? What ID? But at least we know what is what. And I think it's a start to kind of make ends meet.
Okay, Jonathan, thanks for your time.
Yeah, no, it's a pleasure.
We usually do it for 1 hour, so not to keep people too long.
Yeah, I know. People always like fall asleep when I talk. I know, I'm boring. That's what I do. Yeah, that's why I can't charge on a billable hours basis. We have to do products and not services because I'm boring. Yeah, no, really pleasure. Yeah, good to be here. Thanks a lot. Yeah,
thanks for your knowledge. I would have more questions, but that I will save them for the next.
Yeah, we should do it more often. With pleasure.
Yeah,
really.
Yeah.
Bye for now. Yeah, bye.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay, bye everybody.
Cheers. Bye.